everyone. Happy end of August and happy beginning of September. In September, we are introducing a new form of communications. It is one of our many efforts to connect with all of you and share a bit more about our work, what we're thinking about, and planning at Bin Voyage. As you may already be familiar, these moments of insight or times can be quite personal, and other times more work related, and many times a combination of the both. Our hope is through these conversations, you get to have a closer look at what might be going on behind the scene at Bin Voyage. We'll take turn each month and have the pleasure to interview and be interviewed to share more about Bin Voyage. Anyways, without further ado, hi Avi.
Hey, Sumi, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for sharing the newsletter with all of our audience. I think this was one of the most heartwarming pieces that I've read, and it's my great pleasure to have this opportunity to interview you for this issue.
I'm honored, and it's exciting, and I think it's also interesting because we do talk a lot, and I think it's different hats that we wear. So it's interesting to wear this other hat that I think we're wearing. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, certainly. So reading the newsletter you've written for this month, I actually could not stop but smile. It was truly heartwarming to say that again. Thanks for penning such a lovely letter. In the newsletter, you speak about being awesome and feeling awesome. And knowing you and us, I know it is a rare moment. Both of us are quite hesitant to say something was great when it's actually about us. So can you tell us a bit more? What was this epiphany like?
Yeah, for sure. And it's an interesting, I guess, journey because I guess, especially in the field when you're starting your own venture or a new career, you're usually not the best person to do that work, right? You're always a newcomer. And the thing with newcomers is that you don't feel like you're the best in what you do, which is like natural, I guess. And so for us, that phase, I think, was the last few years where we were just out of university, and all of the examples of social entrepreneurs around the world were people who'd done a lot of these things and build organizations. And we used to, I just remember like us spending time in the library and would Google and read about all these organizations that were, so-called awesome. And I'm using that word kind of loosely here, but just organizations that inspired us, that were doing really powerful work at large scales. And we used to think, oh, wow, like one day, I hope we can do something of that sort and make some impact of that sort. And I think what happened in the middle since then and now is that we got so in the weeds of building Bin Voyage and got so busy with the day-to-day of the survival, right? Initially, it's all about survival. It's about financial survival. It's about the survival of your idea. It's about being able to actually get enough traction that you really forget that you're building something. And so, over the years, I think we've not had enough time to reflect on that. And this month, I think something happened where almost on a weekly basis, we were on one hand getting really interesting opportunities for collaborations. For many of you who are following us, you'll hear more about in the following weeks, I think. Some really exciting collaborations came to our doorstep without us going anywhere. It was just like super awesome, people from all over the world wanting to work together. So on one hand, that happened in August. But then on the other hand, something else happened where, we were for the first time we're not in Costa Rica right now because of COVID, and we're not delivering our training as ourselves. And this is the first time that's ever happened since we started Bin Voyage that we're not actually delivering training. We would always be there in the training sessions. We'd always be, especially in the presidential sessions, we'd always be there, even if we're not delivering the workshops, right? And so for the first time, we're observing the work of Bin Voyage, so-called, right? And I thought it was so interesting to observe it and observe our teammates, run the organization, run the training in the most effective manners with so much professionalism, with such creativity and confidence. And I think that really got me to think, oh, wow, like, and this month we had 4 training sessions in this month for our facilitators, and we watched all of those, and it was like this moment of pride of, wow, like I think we've actually built something awesome. It's small, it's early stage, sure, but it's awesome. And I think it's good to sometimes take a step back and also have that realization. So that was a bit of my reflection from this month, if you may say so.
Yeah, That's actually, yeah. I feel like when you put that word down, it really did speak a lot to me as well. I think especially because we speak a lot about letting go of many things as founders, right? Although nowhere near are we to be parents. Borrowing my mom's words, it must be like how parents generally feel when their children grow up to be independent.
Mm-hmm.
So what has this experience been for you personally? Growing, starting something, and it's, just reminding everyone, we've been only around for the past 4 years or so, and compared to many other organizations, we are still very, very small. But I think it's maybe at this stage that many organizations founders go through the phase of like, now we're growing our team, which means like delegation and giving up some responsibilities for the better, because luckily we hired people who are like better at the jobs than we are, and with like so much pleasure we can give up this task. But it also comes with some sort of like emotional moments, right? Like where you are letting go of things that you have been doing for the past 3 to 4 years. So what has this experience been for you, and how are you doing regarding this? And if you may elaborate a little bit, where in the process are you with letting go? Are you like completely, hands off, or how are you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's so tempting to, it's hard to let go. It's hard to let go of anything you love so deeply. And obviously this is something that, in my list of things I love the most in the world, this is right up there, right? And so it's hard to let go. And I don't also feel like I'm letting go perhaps, but I feel like I'm in this transitioning phase of seeing it achieve a certain phase where it can sustain itself was a dream back in 2016 or 17, right? And so that dream being kind of coming close to being true, I think makes me very proud, and I'm filled with a lot of joy on that one front. On the other front, it's so tempting. It's so tempting to know everything, and it's difficult. It's excruciating not to know the details of what's happening in your organization. Like you go from a moment where you know about every single payment that goes in and out, to every single meeting that's been happening, to every single conference we speak in, to a place where you actually don't know much. But that's actually good, because you're not supposed to know everything. You're supposed to know the bigger picture. How is the organization doing? How are we doing as a team? How are we doing as individuals? That's what's important as for us now, and not was that payment made on time or not, because we trust that that's happening, right? So it is difficult to not be so curious. And I think that's something that I've had to struggle with, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you've been dealing with that as well. I think part of that has been also, and I guess the way I'm dealing with that has been also to look forward. And I think that's the key in many cases with leadership, is that you're not, especially when you've reached a certain milestone, it's very tempting to look back and look at what you have and try to kind of, be fully present with the current team. But I think one of the struggles and one of the important things that founders have to do is they have to look forward and look at an empty sheet, right? So we filled this one canvas and it looks beautiful, but our job has not ended. We have to build the other canvas. And looking forward, that's an empty sheet we have, whether that means growing the organization, whether that means growing our team, whether that means growing our programs, right? And so that, I think, is what is been my kind of solution to this, is looking forward and saying, there is that element of accountability and monitoring and support and leadership of the current team. But then there's also that idea of what is it in the future, and what are we going to build next? And I think that fills me with so much excitement and a bit of fear for sure. But I think most the excitement to be like, okay, you know what, the next couple of years, what does the planning look like? Let's go work towards that. And I know you and I, we've been doing a lot of that over the last few weeks. And I think it's filled me with so much joy to also be able to actually work towards that. And I think it does help me forget some of the smaller micromanagement urges that you get, where you're like, but I need to check in on that and that. So that's, I think, how I'm trying to deal with it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, thank you for sharing. And I think we've already spoken quite a bit about this. And I think maybe this is like a step that we are taking towards building something that's bigger than us, right? Like, it was two of us for quite some time. And obviously it was like a bigger team before, but at one point it became two of us as founders. And And we were just the two of us for quite some time until we had the capacity to then hire someone additional, because that comes with a lot of responsibility, because you also don't want to just hire someone when you have enough capital to pay them for a month or two, right? You want to make sure that you are able to sustain them and have an organization that's capable of letting them also grow professionally alongside you. So I think it did take us a while. I mean, obviously now Adriana has completed a whole year and a bit more with us, which has been like one of our biggest accomplishments. And Fernanda has been with us part-time for quite some time. And yeah, like I think for 3 years, but then like I think only officially recently became part of our team, right? So, and I think with that came a lot of like growth pains of like us, you know, as you talked about, wanting to micromanage. I mean, like, you know, knowing both of us, we're not like micromanagers. Like we hate being micromanaged. And I think that was like the motto that we started off. Even between the two of us, we try so hard not to micromanage. And I think obviously with our team, but then there was this urge for us to micromanage, which was like, I think the red flag, like the first red flag that both of us got, right? And I think with that, we started like putting on different structural elements of like, you know, starting a reporting system so that everyone, despite us being just the four of us right now, are aware of different projects that everybody's working on to ease the communication here and there. And yeah, and I think that definitely helped. And I personally, I think I'm still learning to balance because I think, especially because only recently I moved back to Costa Rica, moved back to Korea from being in Costa Rica all the time with the team. So I feel like naturally there, even without me trying to know everything, I just knew because I was living there and was meeting with the team on a daily basis. So it's been definitely something that I think I'm still learning to balance. But I think, like similar to you, I think just because I also know that I hate being micromanaged, that's just been like a bit more of like, yeah, you shouldn't do what you don't want to be done to you. Yeah, enough about me. It's more about you today. So yeah, I think in the newsletter you mentioned that this letting go is kind of a step toward letting go and also feeling awesome about the accomplishment of your team rather than just yourself is like a step towards building a strong organization, right? So I want you to unpack a little bit more here. What does a strong organization look like for you?
No, that's a very good question. And I think it's a tough question because there's a lot of, there are a lot of words that come in mind when I think of a strong organization, right? It's having strong leadership. It's having strong team culture. I think that's a very important team culture is, I think, a very important theme for a strong organization. It's obviously having great ideas, and it's creative, and it's the creativity of a team. It's also structure. It's having the proper organizational structure that allows you to achieve your goals. So I think there's a lot of that. I think especially in these days, the word that does stand out the most among all is the word resilience. It's a very commonly used word. So it may sound a bit more cliched to say that resilience is the most important thing, but I think COVID has really shown that is the end all, right? It's all of those things are great, but if your team is not resilient, if your organization is not resilient, then it is very difficult. And I think we've learned that in good ways and bad ways. We've learned it by being more resilient through times, the number of times we get rejections, and now it doesn't bother us anymore. We're very used to getting rejected. Those are the good phases. There are the bad phases where there are times where a project just feels so difficult and we are so tempted to just let go because it is so difficult. And so there are those good and bads of resilience. And I think at the end of the day, what is important about resilience as an organization is not just coming out of a crisis of an uncertain time, but I think the most important part of building resilience within an organization is providing space and is listening and is connecting as individuals in a team, right? And I think oftentimes people focus on organizational resilience as something as, does the organization have enough money to sustain themselves? Does the organization have enough clients? Do they have a proper setup for delivering their programs? Do they have contingency plans? I really think beyond that, it's more about the people and how are we building people that are resilient. And I think a resilient group will build a resilient organization. And so I think the focus has to be on the team. And I'm quite proud that I think over the past few months, a big focus for the two of us has actually been on that, where whether it's just setting up time for our team, our small team, to connect on an individual level and as a group level, to really check in and make sure that we're doing okay, because these have been really difficult months for everyone. I think that plays a big role in how we are as a big organization. And to be honest, I think things that we did in April and May as a team is now paying off in how we're implementing our programs, right? So right now, we actually don't have as much time to connect as individuals or as a team, because we're on the ground, we're delivering programs, we're doing a bunch of things. But back then, during the lockdown phase, we actually did a lot of kind of internal connection building, and I think that's really paying off in amazing ways. And so I think for me, that is the idea of a strong organization. I again don't think we're to the 100% perfect in our strength, but I am quite confident that I think if we continue with this idea of let's focus on people and values, and then building individual resilience, the organization itself will no doubt be very strong and very resilient through uncertain times in the future as well. So yeah, it's a long-winded answer to your question.
Well, that was a really good one. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, to wrap up, one last question for you. What are you most excited for September?
Yeah, that's a great question. September is a really exciting month for us. I think part of it is that we're training 10 amazing young people from coffee producing communities. If you're watching this and haven't met them, there's a separate video where we talk about them and introduce them. It's very exciting. Please do watch. Somewhere down below we'll put a link or something. We're in the middle of that training phase right now, and this is their second month getting trained. The first month we focused a lot on softer skills. This month we're focusing on coffee skills, so they're really diving deep into production, some of the key themes that we're really highlighting over the next few months. And these are themes that are not just important because we think so, it's themes that producers have shared with us, right? These are themes that are important for them. And so we're going to be highlighting them and really training and drilling our facilitators to be really good at not only knowing them, but also learning how to train people on these topics. So that's going to happen over the next 4 weeks. We're super excited about that. I think that's the biggest highlight for us as a team. I think in addition to that, we're in the weeds of launching some really exciting projects. There's at least 4 or 5 collaborations that are happening that we can't tell you about any of them right now, but there are 4 or 5 collaborations that are in conversation as we speak. They're with really interesting value-aligned organizations, coffee-related, agriculture-related, somewhat external as well. And so I think we're very excited to launch these projects and collaborations. And so I don't know if all of them will be launched by the end of September, but we're trying our best to launch those. So I think the two of us are working a lot on that. I'm excited for that. I think the final thing I'm excited for is that in October, we'll have our board meeting as the organization, and we're finishing our strategic plan for the next year. And so Sangi and I, we've been spending a lot of our time building that strategic plan. And as uncertain as the world is, and not knowing what's going to happen in the next few months, we're starting to plan for 2021. And it's tricky. I think it's so hard to plan for the next year right now. But I think we're very excited because we're creating plans that are contingent to whatever happens or whatever may happen. And so I'm excited for that planning process to be complete. I think the next 4 weeks we'll be finishing that first phase, and then hopefully it gets approved by the board, and then the next few months of the year will be focused on fundraising, sales, trying to get that numbers up so that we can achieve our goals. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about for the next month.
So thank you, Avi, for this moment of chat. I really enjoyed reading your newsletter once again. And for those of you who are new to our newsletter and also our mediums of communication, this is something that we'll try to experiment with each month. We send 1 newsletter a month, so spread the word to your friends if you wanna stay updated and on the go, on the know Please edit this out on the note of what's happening at Pinboyage. Thank you so much for your time and see you next month.